always shows up. Always, always, always.
Absolutely.
And it's just amazing and stuff. And so we face our storms. When we see them, we go right into them because that's where God's peace is.
Sure.
And
right.
And we learned how.
You don't get around it.
Yeah, exactly. You can't go around. You just got to go. You got to go into the eye of the storm, and that's where it's calm. If you don't make it in, then you're just going to be tossed around.
Right.
With everything, the circumstances, and whatever's going on.
Yeah.
You got to face it full on. Note to self.
Joseph. Well, what I love about that is that people do that. They see what Joseph went through undeservedly through the whole process. But one part that I know from our experience, and you'd have to read Living Ugly Like Jesus, A Family's Testimony of Faith, the first book of a 3-book series, to know more of our own testimony. But one of the things that we've had people respond who have read Living Ugly Like Jesus, and some people are like, wow, you guys are, we could never be like that. We could never have faith like that. We could, you're not breaking down. You're not losing it. There's no way I could walk. I wouldn't have the faith to do that. But what we share in those moments is that you're living supernaturally. Joseph was living supernaturally. Joseph did not feel, yes, in the natural, he felt those irons around him, but he was living supernaturally. So when we understand that, I've heard testimony of people who were in the Holocaust, who, you're blown away by their faith, but they've said, listen, God gives us the measure of faith. God gives us the faith to walk through what he wants us to walk through. So we see things externally when we see someone going through something, going, wow, I could never do that. If that was God's plan for you to walk through, you would be able to do it. You would have moments of frustration. There are moments that your flesh was crying out, but you're walking supernaturally. So ultimately, that's what, when people are like, wow, it seems like if you shared more of those, couldn't you share more crying moments or breakdown moments or on the edge moments? And we're like, if we went through that, we wouldn't be here. If you were breaking down, you wouldn't be able to walk it out. When you're exercising your faith completely, trusting God, you are living supernaturally. So you're not going through that. If you did, you wouldn't make it. If you were murmuring and complaining, like the Israelites in the desert, you wouldn't make it. They didn't make it. The only people that made it was Joseph and Caleb. Why? Because they didn't murmur and complain. Yeah.
And Aaron.
Excuse me. No, Joshua.
Joshua.
We have a Caleb Aaron as a son. That's why she said Caleb Aaron. But Joshua and Aaron made it.
No, Joshua and Caleb.
Bible Study 101. Joseph had the coat of many colors. Joshua conquered. Joshua and Caleb made it because they were living supernatural. They were seeing with their supernatural eyes. They knew they could conquer it. So when Don's talking about before we just started to get to know God, we were in bondage in the world. Our flesh was reacting to everything. And we need to make it clear, we have moments of our flesh reacting things, but they're little moments. Those are just fiery darts that kind of come at us, and we got to get the shield of faith up. But ultimately, there's no way we could be here today. There's no way that Joseph could have walked through what he walked through if he was not living supernaturally. So we see the visual, oh my God, he was in prison, oh my, look what he was going through. He wouldn't have made it if he thought of all those things. He wouldn't have made it if he was just meditating on all that, if he was like, oh my, look at me, poor me. That's the story that we've talked to, we counsel people who are living in their story of this terrible negative thing that they're going through. But ultimately, there's no way Joseph could have made it if that's what he was thinking the whole time. Doesn't mean he might not have had moments of going, oh boy. So, we live today and are here today because we're not responding to our flesh. The devil wants you to respond to your physical circumstances. He wants you to respond to where you are in your life. He wants you to just look at things negatively. He wants you to look at things like, things will never change. This is always going to be this way. When are we ever, on and on and on and on. That's how he gets to you, is he tries to get you to look into your past and react to your past. But when we can wake up every day and just know that we wake up every day knowing we couldn't have put ourselves here. How are we here? We remember what our life used to be like. We remember what it was like to live in bondage. We remember what it was like to feel like we were imprisoned by society and expectations that were put on us by society and our family, etc. We remember that. We're not going back to that. And yes, there's times that tries to come at us, tries to make us think, those things. But all we have to do is tell our testimony, share our testimony. And what's our testimony? What God's doing in our lives today. Not just where God has brought us from, but what he's doing today. And when we remind each other of that on a regular basis, it's by the blood of the Lamb and the power of your testimony. And your testimony is, what has God done? We know that we've received Jesus. He shed his blood for us. We are free of the curse. We understand, but we have to exercise that. And we have to walk out in faith. So when you have those moments of feeling like, things are coming down around you, all you got to do is remind you that, like Don said, you go right into the storm knowing that he's got you. He's taking you through this. If you know that he's the one that's leading you and you have discernment in that.
Right. And then when he was talking about our testimony, I was flipping more forward in the Psalms this morning, and I came to Psalms 107.
107, Psalms 107.
And it's verse 2.
Verse 2.
And it says, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has delivered from the hand of the adversary." And that's in the Amplified version, but when I opened up my online Bible, it opened up to the New International Version, and I don't have it in front of me, but it says, "Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story."
Say so.
So, tell the story about, and then the next line is whom he has delivered from the hand of the adversary. Tell the story of how he has delivered you.
And where you are and what's going on.
Your story, not your sad story, right. Not where you're at.
Right.
And that's where your strength comes from. God's glory is in the story.
Well, what happens is we have a lot of people that share with us. You can have people and you can share how you received Jesus. Oh, I was a drug addict and God came in and there's a dramatic thing happening. God came into my life, or I was going through this and I had enough and I received it. We hear testimonies of these broken moments where people finally let go and receive God into their hearts. And we'll hear people, share. They'll share that, like, I'm saved now, and this is what I was like, and now I'm not doing that anymore. But our question is always, well, then what's God doing now? He saved you for a reason. It wasn't just so that you'll now go to heaven. If that was the case, then you'd be saved, and then you'd go to heaven. See ya. We're still here. So what we're talking about is that what keeps, he gave Dawn an instruction. It was get to know my son. When he received her, get to know my son. It was in getting to know Jesus that our purpose, you have to get to know who he is, because then you get to know who you are in him. Yes. And then once you know that, then he can give you your mission. Then he can give you the papers that, what's it called? Your orders. He can give you your orders then, which is your mission, which is your purpose. So Dawn knew Jesus a year before I did. Once I had received Jesus, he then was able to give us our orders. And it was that our purpose was to turn the hearts of the children to the parents and the hearts of the parents to the children, to bring his family together. So once we were both on the same page, once we both had received Jesus and knew who he was and knew who we were in him, then he could give us our orders, our purpose. But the first thing is to get to know him. And there's a lot of Christians that know about Jesus, but they don't know Jesus. Even the ones who've received him haven't now got to know him. Because if you feel purposeless, if you feel lost, then you haven't gotten your orders, which means you don't know him well enough to be able to get those orders, to be able to trust him, to be able to walk out and be obedient, to walk out what he's told you to walk out. So that's, for us, we had to get to know him, and we did right away. Right when I received Jesus a year after Dawn did, not knowing that she had done that, we dove into his word. Just dove into his word. And immediately things started happening. in the natural, in our natural circumstances that changed. And we'll speak more about that, but today is just explaining that you have to get to know Him to be able to walk supernaturally. And you have to get to know Him to be able to have a purpose, or to know what your purpose is. And once you do that, you will walk through circumstances that, I mean, people read our testimony and are like, how did you do that? How, possibly could you have traveled like that, camped in a van over all that time, traveled like missionaries, trust Him in the way that you did? Because we were living supernaturally. It was natural to us. Our natural had become supernatural. And then you just walk it out, whether you understand it or not. If He tells you to go, you go. When you get to a point, and we have, where you turn on a dime when you get a word. When you pray and you open up this word, and He says, go left, go right, go here, go there, you go. You stand literally on a word from Him. And that's trusting Him completely. And then you're living supernaturally. And another thing for those, and we've been through this, you can get on the other side of circumstances and walk through that storm, but you don't look back. Not at the storm. You look back at the things that God did as you walked through those things. Because if you look back on the storm, then your flesh starts to react. You don't look back going, oh my God, I can't. We have friends that have been through, God walked them through some circumstances. They've got on the other side, but when they look back, they just look at the circumstances. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we went through that. So now their flesh is going through what it didn't go through when they went through it. It's like retro flashback. It's a flashback. Don't have a flashback, because a flashback can bring it
back
to the present. Bring it back. You don't want that. When God's walked you through something and you live supernaturally, you didn't hold your breath the whole time. Oh, I made it through. You breathed, you walked, He worked through you. So when we look back at our testimony, we don't look back and go, oh my gosh, we camped in a van in the middle of winters in Denver and did this and did that, and oh, it was tough, it was difficult. No. We look back and go, look at all that God did through us at that time. Look how He grew our programs. Look at all the lives He touched. We knew that we were there for not us, for Him to work through us. So you don't do a flashback. Don't look back. This has always been, when He's talked to us in His Word, has always been, again, the Israelites in Egypt. Remember when they were walking through the desert, they were murmuring, complaining. They wanted to go back and be slaves again because at least they got fed 3 meals a day, blah, blah, blah. They had moments, they were certainly eating the manna, but they weren't trusting that it was always going to show up. Moses hit the rock twice because he even freaked out, going, come on. He was getting frustrated. So ultimately, when we get scripture about Egypt, or don't go back to Egypt, which is either Jeremiah 42 or what have you, I'll remember that. We've learned that don't go back to that mindset. Life was not better before.
Don't have the flashback.
Don't have a flashback. Remember, because you can bring it back. Your worst day with Jesus is still better than your best day without Him. So don't go back. Put on your full armor of God. Walk in your testimony based on your salvation. Remember, that's guilt-free and sin-free. So walk it out. And like Joseph, you won't react to your worldly circumstances. You won't react to the iron around you. You'll have a purpose because you trust Him. You'll know your purpose. And you'll be able to walk it out because you'll have faith to do that.
He'll give you this that strength when you are at your weakest to push through.
He'll give you the peace.
And the peace.
That what? Surpasses all understanding.
Because you don't know. You're like, how can I have peace or know that God is working here? But you do. It gives you a supernatural peace inside that everything's going to be A-okay.
J-okay.
Yeah.
Jesus okay.